Hello, YouTube Reseller Mom here, along with Tina and Michelle from GS1. So thank you everybody for joining us today. Today we are going to be talking with Michelle on GS1 barcodes and hijacking listings. So welcome, Michelle. Can you give everybody a brief synopsis of where you're from and what you do?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. So I'm Michelle with GS1 US. For those of you who don't know, GS1 is a global standards organization. Most people know us for the barcode, but we do manage a lot of different standards for business processes outside of just the barcode. I represent GS1 US, which supports the US market, but GS1 is a global organization that manages the standards around the world. And we have many other member organizations such as GS1 Canada, GS1 UK, GS1 Germany, GS1 France that we work with. We all are here to be advocates of the standards, and I'm here to help answer any of your questions today.
Yay! I am going to pop in the link into the chat here and also just hit up your website really quick so people can know that they're on the right website here. So it is gs1.us.org, and this is where you can find all of the information and contacts and everything that we're talking about right here. So definitely check out their website.
We also have a great GS1 US YouTube site too that has a lot of short videos, so I could refer to some of those just to help people kind of break down the standards, because sometimes it's a little complicated, so we try to make it as easy as possible for people to understand.
Yeah. And most of us here, our channel, both Tina and I's channel, is focused in on Amazon. So if you would like to give a quick synopsis on barcodes for Amazon and the ins and outs and how you relate with that.
Sure. So first of all, I'm going to start with what is, like, a lot of people are confused on what's the difference between a barcode, a G10. You'll hear, a GTIN or a G10, a UPC, an EAN. Some people use them interchangeably, but I figured I'd help break that down because they are a little bit different. So a G10 is a global trade item number. We call them G10s. And they are actually really a family of identifiers. So they are really the numbers, that number string that you assign to your products. It's a unique identifier. Commonly used in the United States is the 12-digit and sometimes referred to as the UPC, but it's really the 12-digit G10 that then gets encoded into a barcode, and that barcode is the UPC barcode. So that's why sometimes they get used interchangeably. And that barcode is what actually goes beep at the retail checkout stand. Another G10 is a 13-digit G10 that is usually associated to the EANs, usually created outside of the US market, like in Europe. It is the same thing. They are globally unique identifiers. It's just one is 13 digits, one's 12 digits. And they are kind of like the license plate that you assign to your product to make it uniquely identified. So hopefully that kind of explains the difference between a G10 or the different family of G10s, which UPCs and EANs fall into. And then those get encoded into a barcode so a machine can read it.
Nice. Nice. And with Amazon, a lot of people are, moving towards more private label and, personalized type of items. And if you are going to private label, I believe you need to get a UPC code of some sort for your product. And from my understanding, the only legit place to buy them that Amazon will be happy with is through your company. Is that correct?
So on Amazon site, yes, they do say for a lot of product categories, you need to assign a G10. And that G10 should be sourced from a GS1 member organization. So coming to a GS1 member organization like GS1 US, you are getting a truly authentic GS1 issued barcode or UPC or G10. I always use them interchangeably too. But we also record in a database that is accessible by anyone. It's for free to that that when you put in that G10, it associates that G10 to the actual company who has licensed it. So it really helps protect your brand, also protect you as the rightful owner of that G10, and it allows Amazon and other retailers and other platforms to be able to do that validation to ensure that you are listing the product that you truly have ownership over.
Now, does Amazon ever contact your company to verify that, or is it in a registered database that they just look at and know that it is really registered to me?
Yep. So there is a database that is accessible, and so they do hit that that database and do those checks. And again, all of the GS1 member organizations record that information into that database. I call it GPIR. I've heard different people say it, even in our own organizations, but we have access to that link that you could type in a G10 in there, and it'll show up, who's the licensee of that G10. Mm-hmm.
John just shared that link with me here, and I put it in the chat, but here you go. If you are looking for the GS1 company database, you can, definitely bookmark this so that you can look it up later when you do need to use it.
Yep.
And so then my understanding is I buy a G10 UPC number from your company. And we discussed a little bit before we went live that you now can just buy a single one for those that don't need a lot of them. And a single one is about $30.
Correct. So first of all, we've been licensing G10s for many, many years. So the Barcode's been around for 50 years. And so we've been offering these identifiers to brand owners for many years. And for many years, we traditionally only offered them in kind of bulk packages. And they were usually targeted for those large brand owners. So you could buy them in 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. We've started noticing a shift over the last decade that a lot of companies are smaller companies, and they don't need that large of a capacity. So we've been expanding our offering. And so we have packs of 10, packs of 100, packs of 1,000. And even more so, we're hearing from even smaller brands saying, we just have 1 or 2 products and we want to get our foot started, on Amazon. And we just want to see how this is going to work for us. And can we just get one? And so November of, I think, 2020, we launched the single G10, which allows those sellers to come to us and license a single G10 or, a handful of them. They're only $30 each. And we don't have any renewal fees on those. So if you look at our packs, usually those you have to buy, in like a capacity base, and there's an annual renewal fee. But for the single G10, once you license it, once you pay your $30, it's yours, and it's yours for life.
Well, that's a really great way to start. And when you buy a pack, let's say you bought a pack of 10 where there is a renewal fee, is it a renewal fee for just that whole pack or for every single one that's in it?
It's just for that whole pack. So for that 10 capacity. Yep. It's an annual renewal fee.
And then, I know you don't totally understand the ins and outs of Amazon, but if I then had an item listed on Amazon that got hijacked, which this happens sometimes, and all of a sudden now some other company has it as their brand, the pictures changed to a whole different product, but it's still assigned to my number. My guess is that this now helps me fight and win my battle with Amazon.
Most definitely. So again, if you are the rightful owner or the licensee of that G10, what you could do is we provide from a support perspective, a certificate of ownership that you are the licensee of that identifier. So you could provide that to Amazon's Seller Support Center, and they could, showing that, yes, you are the rightful owner, and then get your G10 back.
That's really great.
Well, there's sometimes, there's a couple of extra steps you have to take, but if you provide that certificate of ownership, then that should help you.
Yeah. A lot of times I get G10 for bundles that I know are going to expire. Like whatever the popular Disney movie is this year, let's say it was, Spider-Man. And next year that Spider-Man isn't going to be popular again. Those items I can't even get again that I made a bundle out of. And so now that barcode is of no longer of use to me. Can I then re-register it or reuse it on a different product, or is it now no longer good?
Once you assign a G10 to your product and you've had it in market, that G10 should stay on that product and not be reused. So even if you are not going to create any new ones, the G10 management standard indicates do not reuse. So you would have to get a new G10 for your new bundle. Yes.
Okay. Did you have a question you were going to ask, Lucy?
No. Side note, my catalytic converter got stolen out of my RV, and so they are repairing it. So she was calling me anyhow. So apologies for the interruption. Of course, the 1 hour during the week that I need to not be interrupted is, of course, the 1 hour that they need to talk to me. John linked me a thing here. So there we go. I don't know if you wanted to touch on this, Michelle.
Yeah, that was just our press release when we launched that single G10 in November of 2020. So it was just our announcement that we were launching that new offering, that single G10 for $30. We wanted to make, the community be aware of our new offering. So that was just the link to our press release then.
I think that's a fabulous, fabulous way for somebody to try out, just testing the waters. So many people are afraid of making a listing or afraid of getting in trouble with Amazon, or just the whole thing is they're afraid of it. But I think what a great way to test. Just try it one time. My thoughts are, you're always afraid. Well, what if I fail? What if I fail? But it's like, what if you don't? What if you don't fail? And it's one product. So I think that's such a great way to try one bundle, or even if it's not a bundle, just one private label item that you found. I think that's such a great opportunity.
Yeah. I think too, it also, like I go back to, it protects you as the owner of the G10. So we do know that sometimes there are other sources of G10s out there in the market that do not come from GS1. And sometimes, sellers will find that might be a route that they want to choose. It might be cheaper. They might have not realized that that they need to go to GS1. But what happens is once they do use those G10s from a non-GS1 source, they don't pass that validation in the database, and it usually blocks them from listing their product because there's not that validation. But it could also require them to then come back to GS1 and get a G10 from us, and there could be a lot of extra costs associated to it. So we've also heard stories where sellers have had to relabel their packages because they did actually put a barcode on it. They might have been selling it to other channels. So I know Amazon doesn't go through a point of sale, so you don't require a barcode on it, but you do barcode it with that G10, and then you sell it into other retail channels like a Target or a Walmart, and then you have to relabel it all because it doesn't pass. So
and an animal scratching at the store. Now it's my turn to walk away.
I locked my kitten in the bedroom so he wouldn't join us. He would have made a grand appearance otherwise.
It's always something, but
mine is a cat too, but I would rather them come in and be quiet than the constant scratching at the door. So yes, when I first was listing on Amazon, which is going back, 2014, 15, when I was making my first listings, that's what I used to do, was buy them on eBay. They were called Leading Edge. It was like $17, and I had pages and pages of codes, and they worked all the time. But things have changed, and things are constantly changing and getting stricter, and it's getting tighter and tighter, the constraints Amazon does put upon us. So it's not easy to just do that anymore. And now when you're creating listings, if the barcode doesn't match that product, it stops you. So then you're jumping through hoops to get a GTIN exemption. And so, I'm a little more seasoned, so I do know how to now get around even the new ways of getting in that GTIN exemption. But now that even hits a wall with problems, like I first stated, where I had GTIN exemption, I created the listing, but then I needed to update it or make changes. Amazon doesn't let me because they say they have to reach out to the brand owner, which is me, but
Yeah.
because I'm not, that's not a registered brand, because there are ways to get GTIN and have a brand without it being registered.
Mhm.
You go in these circles, which
Yep.
eventually you can get resolved. But if I had this GTIN exemption, our GTIN barcode from GS1, I think that would, and the certificate, I think that would be a game changer.
Yeah. We find that, again, being able to, clearly show that you are the true owner of that G10
Yeah.
with that certificate can help you out. There are some other listing issues that common listing issues that we've heard people run into. So I could kind of run through those a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd love to hear
I
those.
think one of the first ones, when you first go into list, it asks you, what is your product identifier? And remember, I was kind of trying to break them down. And I think in the Amazon platform, it says G10 UPC EAN. And so people will come to us and say, oh, I've got my G10 from GS1, but in the Amazon platform, that's actually meant to be a 14 digit. So if you think about also what I explained about the EAN and the UPC, if you come to GS1 US and you get your identifier, it's generally that 12-digit G10, which will be associated to the UPC. So if you get that 12-digit product identifier, then you would actually select UPC. If you went to, say, GS1 UK and got your identifiers there, you would most likely put a 13-digit identifier in there and do EAN. The G10 is actually really the 14-digit, which is meant for kind of like a case pack or a larger logistical item. Instead of selling like one can of coffee, you're selling a whole case of cans of coffee. So it's meant for a larger, and those used to be mostly just for logistical tracking, but now a lot of things sell on these marketplaces, and you can now, instead of buying just a one each, you could buy a whole entire, case. So that's what that 14-digit is really meant to be.
So we've got some questions, and John sent me a thing too. But first, let's get to Lesley here. She says, "Hi, Tina, Michelle. If I want to buy a single barcode, can I do that? Can I do this if I don't have a trademarked brand name?" And then second part is, can I make my own brand name today and then buy a single UPC code from you?
Yep. So when you come to the GS1 US site, you could come in, select single G10. We do ask for two pieces of information. We do ask for the product description and the brand name. Those do get put into our database that is, again, shared. It feeds into that larger GPR database. But it doesn't have to be trademarked. You could, as you're creating your products, at least put the brand name on it, and then put it into, when you're licensing your G10, it will then be shared in that database.
And so the brand name that she registered with you, her name's Michelle, so it's going to say, Michelle's Trinkets, that she bought that when she so that UPC is already going to be attached to Michelle's Trinkets. So when she goes to create that listing on Amazon, it shows that it is registered to a brand called Michelle's Trinkets.
Well, it'll show the company name, so it could be Michelle's company,
Right.
LLC. So it'll associate to that company, that brand name. It does get shared. I'll be honest, I don't think Amazon looks at that brand name in our database,
Okay.
but it is available in our database. But I think that the way Amazon uses the data, I believe they're not checking the brand name that is registered at the time when a UPC is created or a license through our system.
And I think a lot of people that do Amazon or have a lot of private label type brands, they might be doing several DBAs. So I think as long as you have that certificate that says you own that UPC, you're good.
Yeah, because I have an LLC, I have a store name, and then I have brand names on Amazon that are, they're all different. They're not all the same names. So.
Right. And I think if we look at some of the common error messages too, outside of just when you first list, there's what is the identifier? The next one is, I think, product can't be found, I think. And I think that's the one where when you get that, it's usually because that brand name is not associated to to your company name in Amazon. And so I think that's when you could show there's a relationship you have with your brand with your company name. So is there some like trademark information, that sort of thing?
Okay.
Yes. John had messaged, and thank you, John. John is Michelle's helper. I don't know what to call him. He's a PR
He's
guy.
amazing.
He's amazing, yes. He says the error message, 3 of the most common errors sellers find when listing their products on Amazon are value specified invalid when listing product identifier. Second
That's
one would be
I covered. Yep.
details not, hold on, I got to go over to the other spot. Details not match, referring to the brand name, and then product already exists, that it's in the catalog.
Yep. So it was that details not match. That's usually where if you go to list and your brand name doesn't match what they have, and they do check that against the brand registry, but not every seller goes through brand registry. So that's where you may have to show some proof of your brand being associated to your company, whether it's some kind of documentation that you own that brand, or that you've purchased products with that brand name on it, or a picture with your brand. I'm not as comfortable with saying I know all the ins and outs on that, but I do know that there's different ways that you could prove that you are the brand owner.
Now, I am curious, as far as the brand or that product identifier already exists in the catalog. So there are times I'm scanning a product. Let's say it's a box of cornbread mix. And from that one UPC, there are a few listings on Amazon. So somebody has used that UPC for the same thing, the same cornbread mix, but they've used it to do a single pack and a double pack, and sometimes even a 4-pack, all under the same UPC code. Is that allowed?
What will happen is you're not uniquely identifying the variations. And this is a common issue, just identifying products. You have the cornbread, but you're actually selling it in 3 different variations. So if you're selling it as a single, that should have a unique identifier. When you're selling it in like a 2-pack, and that is how you're selling it, and when the consumer orders it, they're going to get 2 instead of just 1. That should actually have a separate G10 associated to the 2-pack, and same with like a 3. So you really should have 3. If you assign just 1, then how do you know exactly which variation of that product you're going to get?
Right.
So,
And you can buy things. I have bought things like, let's say, from the Dollar Tree, for instance, and it could be a set of summer beach balls, and one is a pink flamingo, one is a unicorn, but they all have the same UPC code on that case back of beach balls of 4 different styles. Now, that's why and then so sometimes I'm having to show this to Amazon so I can create a listing with each of the beach ball variations with the different pictures, because they share the same UPC code.
yeah. So there are some other standards, and this gets a little bit more complicated because they're not used on some of the platforms for identifying things. Like if you think about toys, like the Matchbox cars, if you think of toothbrushes that may have the different characters on it, like I really wanted to get that Elsa one for my daughter because she loves Frozen, but she didn't want the Spider-Man one.
Right.
But generally they are usually identified with a single G10. There are some ways within the standards to identify those kind of variations, but that gets a little bit more complex and not used on the Amazon platform. So there are some cases, especially like in toys and those kind of specialty like licensed products, that you do run into problems because they all usually carry the same G10.
Okay,
So
another question.
Yeah. Lesley has another question, and this is a good reminder for anybody watching currently. Go ahead and list write out your question. And if we don't get to you during the live show, you can always leave it down below and we will get it to Michelle and get it answered for you. So Lesley says, if Michelle were to list something as Michelle's Trinkets and then someone else came in, hijacked her brand name and trademarked it and control her listings, right? I'm kind of, I think what she's asking is, let's say that you did, get a UPC code and under, all registered under you, and somebody else came in and tried to hijack that. Could they do that? I've
heard it happen, but I think you could go back to protect your listing and say that I'm the actual, licensee of this, and here's my certificate. I've heard of it happening, but I don't know how that happens. I don't know how.
And Lesley, I don't know if you were watching earlier, but she said that you will also be issued a certificate.
Yeah.
Mhm.
A
So you
certificate
can
of
upload
ownership.
that certificate when we're making our case files to Amazon. Like, look, here is the certificate that this belongs to me. Where usually when we're fighting these cases, we don't have these certificates. And I
Right.
know Lesley knows what I'm talking about because we fought some of the same battles.
So I don't know if everybody here has heard, but this was in the news in the last, I'd say 2 weeks. Somebody or somehow this one company,
The generic.
it became apparent that they trademarked the word generic, which and so all of the generic listings then got thrown under this other brand, and it was like 3 or 4, it was, I don't remember the store name. It was like Brad's Emporium or something. It all got switched from generic over to that. And we're still not quite sure whether it was a glitch in the Amazon system or somebody tried to hijack all the generic.
Hijack it, yeah. Unfortunately, I mean, it's really sad. There are a lot of bad actors out there that try to game the system. And I mean, I think Amazon's doing their best they can to help that, but there are just people that still want to come in and try to game it that way. So I didn't hear that, but
I had 1 or 2 listings that got messed up, and then trying to talk with the reps. Some of the reps understood that, we know about this glitch, but some, they're so far removed from what's actually happening in the States and stuff.
Yeah.
Lesley, I had posted about it in my Facebook group because I discovered it on I think it was on a Reddit thread that I discovered that, and I posted about it, and some people were like, yeah, that happened to me. Because a lot of Amazon bundlers get registered in the beginnings of learning how to do bundles. They will get a GTIN exemption for the brand name generic. So that's a very common way to start beginning to do bundles. So
that makes sense.
There's a lot of generic listings on Amazon.
Yeah.
Well, and generic is really good if you're testing the waters, but once you want to take it and you are starting to establish your brand, you're going to want to start, putting those things into place to protect yourself, such as getting that certificate, the GS1, and trademark registering and brand registering. But, if you're just starting out, that's a lot of back work if you're not sure your stuff is going to sell. So it's kind of nice to be able to test the waters.
Yeah.
And see if you can actually make any money off of what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's great. And it really does add that layer of protection with this certificate. And especially if it's been a type of bundle or a type of product or listing that you have been successful with, that that this is really what I want to go for. I've tried all these other listings that are generic or, all the things that you've done already. It's just a great way to really make it legal.
Yeah.
One of the other black hat tactics, I love that term too, Lesley. One of the other black hat tactics that I do see out there is people just going and kind of stealing barcodes and using them to their own whatever they want. Mm-hmm. You'll see it a lot of times from Dollar Tree items where you scan the item and it's coming up something completely different. Yeah. But because it's not registered in Amazon system, they feel like it's up for grabs. You just go find a barcode that's not in Amazon and you use that for your item. But I think that's going to catch up to people too.
Yeah, I think some people, it could be maybe it's not having the right education and understanding that those are unique and assigned to the products and then assigned to whoever owns that G10. But then again, going back to, there are just bad actors that try to game the system and want to get around it. I think that's why Amazon has started putting a lot more kind of rigor around checking if it is a true G10. And I've also seen where they're starting to take out some of the G10 exemptions from some of the different categories that you could list on. So they're trying to put a little bit more rigor. And it really, at the end of the day, is really to protect the brand owner. People need to understand that. against some of these bad actors that like to come in and game the system.
There is the good and the bad in it, but as it gets stricter for all of us that are good, it can just be
It does make it harder.
So hard.
Yep.
One of the other there's a lot of bad actors on every platform out there. I know that Tina and I have seen these videos, but there's some videos out there that are toting on how to get free stuff by abusing the return policy at different stores. And telling them, oh, you can get a free mouse, you just buy it on Amazon and swap it out for your old mouse and send it back and do a return. And you're like, wait, no, that's stealing. You're telling people how to steal. That's not a hack. That's theft. And I wish YouTube, some days I wish there was more regulations, and other days I wish there was less regulation. But at the end of the day, you've got to watch what others are making money off of selling you, what kind of information they are selling you.
Yeah.
We had a question up here from William. I've been on Amazon, had never have made a listing. Is there a good video for that? Yeah, there's some good videos out there about that. I'll try to get back to you, William, with some links. Yes, Tina's got some on her channel for sure. And then
I don't know why when I answer a question, it answers it as me and you answering it. Maybe because we're joined, but.
Oh, yeah, you did, huh?
So when I answered it, it's like you and I typed the same reply.
Yeah, we're trying. And then question 2, what are some faux pas when create a listing that are not obvious to a newbie? I would say a lot of the things that we're talking about right here, having Michelle on and going through what's the difference between the UPC and the ISBN and the EIN and all the little acronyms is very helpful when you're out there sourcing to know kind of what and matching. You've got to match the brand to what it's registered with for it to go through. Otherwise, you're going to get a bunch of errors.
I have a couple of other tips that I heard from somebody else. So I'm just going to run through them because I thought these were interesting. So maybe you guys run into them and you may have had these. So we've talked about, having your brand associated to you and also just making sure that you have your certificate. You've come to GS1. I've also heard that there's a style guide that Amazon uses that can also kind of trip some people up. So when you go to list, you may not, you shouldn't put all caps in your listing. You should not put emojis in your listings. Some people think it's cute, but that's some of the faux pas that you're not really supposed to do. I also heard that if you have any kind of claims against a product, say like if you're like, especially in the last year or two with the pandemic, people are coming up with like hand sanitizers and things and saying, yes, kills 100% bacteria, but you really don't have the claim to do that could cause some issues too. So there are some kind of tips and tricks of just making sure that when you do actually, list your product, that you're thinking of some of these other things outside of just, some of the core basics on how you identify your product, but also making sure that you're doing some of the other pieces of the listing correctly. Also variations, like if you've had, I always think of variations, like thinking of shirts. So you said you're selling a short sleeve t-shirt and you put, red, yellow, blue short sleeve t-shirt, and that was in your product description. But then you also throw in a picture of a long sleeve shirt. There are some of those kind of like not using the variations correctly can cause some issues too. So those are some of the things that I was actually talking to a seller a couple of weeks ago, and those were some tips that I got. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting to know too. So
yeah, Lesley, who's in our chat watching today, she's a whiz at flat files and doing things like that, where I'm sure she's ran into some of those things.
Yeah.
So Lesley writes in that another question about GS1. I sell clothing, so I'll use this as an example. Many times the GS1 registered brand is not the brand of the product, but the manufacturer's. For instance, Knight's Apparel might be registered with a GS1 code identifying it as from Hanes, who manufactures Knight's Apparel. This is causing matching errors with Amazon, and they're not accepting the GS1 GTIN. Interesting.
Good question.
Those are, and that goes back to having the documentation of associating who the manufacturer is and maybe the licensee, because there's licensee agreements And so having that documentation will help. We've found that, even though, because there are a lot of brand manufacturers out there, very large ones, that do license out to other brand names. And so you just have to have that licensee agreement. But
how would we as a seller get that? Like if Lesley has already purchased these things, then how would she even be able to obtain that? That would be, she would actually have to call the manufacturer and ask, like, hey, can I have a copy of that?
Yeah, that one, I don't know how you get those, because those are usually relationships between like the brand manufacturer and the actual brand.
And generally, they are never going to answer an email like that or give that to us. I would love to say it was that easy, but
yeah. And this is where I think some of those kind of roadblocks that you run into is because they're trying to protect those brands. Like, do you really have a reseller agreement with these companies? Some of them do say, no, I can't have anybody else resell my products. So even in like bundles or things like that, what you guys are doing. So those are hard ones to work through that I don't have a good answer for.
Like Lesley, sometimes, because I've done Hanes, I've listed Hanes where it was multi-pack. They always had the same barcode. You have to jump through a few hoops with Amazon, and then they allow you 96 hours that you can list all these things. They give you like this temporary window of permission, and then you just go crazy and get them all listed. But I know what she's talking about. At least mine were Hanes, and it was belonged to Hanes.
Mm-hmm.
I have not ran into what she's asking, but I do know of this issue.
Mm-hmm.
I think where I would see running into it is if you go to a Target, a Walmart or whatnot, and let's say they have licensed Disney shirts or a new movie comes out. And I'm trying to think what's coming out this summer. We just went and saw Doctor Strange. So let's say Doctor Strange is now owned by Disney, right? Disney bought Marvel. So anyhow, if you have Target selling a Doctor Strange shirt in that UPC, it might be licensed to Marvel. It might be, it might show as the owner as Marvel or as Disney, and it may not match. So now you can't list with that code,
Mm-hmm.
even though you got a really great deal on Doctor Strange shirts. You're now stuck with that product, and you're probably going to have to just list that in a different way if you're doing retail arbitrage.
My brain just now said, like, we'll go back to Lesley's example, Knight's Apparel, which it's registered to Hanes. I think I would just do my brand as Hanes.
Yeah, you can try.
In my title, like Knight's Apparel by Hanes, yada, yada, yada. I think I would just tweak it as such. So that way that my UPC still matched who it was registered to. Do you guys know what I'm saying? Like, it's working out in my head, but it's not coming out of my mouth.
Just change who the brand or the manufacturer is to match whatever it is appropriately. Yeah. You can, and a lot of times if it's newer products, that would work. But sometimes I've seen recycled UPCs or whatnot be tried to used. And so it might already be registered for something in the catalog that's not even close to what it is now.
Yep.
William says, I bought a bunch of 15-pack Peeps for Easter. The UPC is for a single 15-pack. Okay. He follows up with, the title on Amazon doesn't say 4-pack, and the Amazon app doesn't say 4-pack, but the customer page on the desktop says 4 packs of 15 in the corner. Is there a way to get that fixed? Not really. If you're not the owner of the listing, you can try to submit.
You used to be able to fix those things, but not now. 2022 has been a rough start with fixing listings. And I used to fix and improve all kinds of listings I was on, even though I didn't create it, because the original creator either just fell off of it or the bullet points were gone. And so, I like to think I always, made it way better for all of us that were on the listing. But now Amazon doesn't let us even do that anymore.
Yeah, it's very tough to fix things out there. You can, on the actual detail page as a customer, you could submit a report for wrong information. So that sometimes gets things fixed, sometimes it doesn't. But if you're a customer and you're looking at, let's say, a white t-shirt and it's clearly showing a red t-shirt, you would report an issue and say the product doesn't match the title, it's confusing. And then somebody follows up with that, but whether they actually fix it or not, we'll see if it's in their interest or not. He says, I tried 3 or 4 times, but I'm not the brand owner. Yep. If you're running into that, then that's pretty much a stop. You can't really do anything.
William, it used to be easy to do that. We run into this same thing that you're running into, even on listings I've created myself. Them saying that I'm not the brand owner when I am. And this is all new. This is new for all of us. It's very frustrating.
Mm-hmm. It is. Lesley said she tried what you were talking about and it didn't work.
I saw that. Man.
Yeah, sometimes it's
like with those tricky little workarounds.
Sometimes it's honestly easier just to go and create a new listing correctly than to try and get something fixed.
A lot of people don't like to do that because then they lose like reviews or sales and stuff like that. But sometimes I've heard that that's just the easiest way to get it out there correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I understand that's really tough, but sometimes it's just you hit your head so many times, and then figuring out flat files. Flat files is probably the number one thing that has helped me get things fixed in the last 6 months. That has been useful. It's a pain in the butt, though.
Yeah,
I hate flat files.
For us, it is. Lesley's pretty good at them. So, William, what I have done, and I'm guessing you probably bought Peeps at like Walmart or Target, so in this case, it would not work. But if you are buying wholesale from a manufacturer and have like that really good invoice for Peeps, you can submit that with pictures of the Peeps, showing the whole package, the package with the barcode on it, submitting a case to Amazon. You can often make a new listing with that barcode despite that UPC being on the incorrect listing. Amazon may then shut down the other one. I don't know what they'll do, but I've got things done in that manner. It's just a headache because it's opening the case, waiting for the reply, fighting the case. It just depends how badly you want to list that thing. Like, is that headache and the fight worth it? And a lot of times it is, a lot of times it isn't. You choose your battles.
Yeah, I would say a lot of online arbitrage, retail arbitrage, all of those items is not quite what we're here focusing in on, because those are all things you're going to find on clearance, or you're going to find replens, and they're already done and listed, and it's not quite the work that you want to put in. Going into creating listings and buying a GS1 is when you're ready for that next step on having your own product either made or manufactured or making it yourself, and you now want to have a listing on Amazon that's just for you, just your product, and you have all the authenticity taken care of, all of the testing, all of the things taken care of, and ready for that level of selling on Amazon. A lot of the UPC issues and glitches on detail pages are always going to be there, and it's just a circle with RA items. And really, you're not buying, if you're doing private label, you're probably looking in hundreds of units, versus retail arbitrage, online arbitrage, you're looking at less than hundreds of units at a time for the most part. At least I wouldn't get on any listing. I wouldn't buy 300 Peeps without a good listing to be on to sell that stuff without a backup plan.
I've made my own Peeps listings, but that's just another video for another day.
William says he's not eating 30,000 Peeps.
Yeah, I don't
think
think
you should try.
I'm not eating one Peep, let alone that many.
I would honestly, William, get G10 exempt for a bundle type listing, or sell them over on eBay or whatnot. But you can bundle Peeps up and make a generic listing and move, get in, get out of your product.
Your life.
But, Tina and I are at the point where we're making bundles and getting our brand trademarked, etc., so that we need the GS1s to have that unique code for our product. Lesley has another question here for Michelle. Oh, let me see here. Did I hit the right one?
It jumps. Yes. She says, I have a clothing product that I purchased with GS1 registration, but the company has since sold out and no longer exists. This is creating an Amazon problem, as I cannot prove which company registered the product.
So when the original clothing manufacturer licensed their prefix with GS1,
correct, and they're no longer in business.
There still should be associated to the prefix. It would just be most likely inactive versus active, but it still shows that they are the licensee of that. So, I don't know, it doesn't stop showing, even if they went out of business. So we still have, because once we license that prefix to a company, it stays with that company, and we don't recycle our prefixes. So
can she contact your company and get proof of that initial registration or any type of documents?
it would show up in that GPIR database, and it would just show up as inactive, not active.
And where do we access this database?
So I think the link was shared initially at the beginning of this, but it's been shared in the
okay. So it's that same
database.
Okay, so the database is within that website.
Yep.
Okay.
So there's like down there, you could search by G10, and then it will show that company association.
There you go. I've popped in the link again. And then we have another question from Judy. To create a bundle, do we have to buy a G10?
No, you don't have to.
Yeah. And it's, bundle creation is a huge topic, and there's a lot of different ways you can do it or whatnot. Mm-hmm. But essentially, like if I want to take my lotion here that already has a UPC code for it, and it's by Bath and Body Works, and I want to make a bundle of 2, you would want to get a G10 exemption so that you could list a bundle of 2 lotions together without having to get a unique product identifier. If you were going to start manufacturing lotion and you wanted to sell it on Amazon, you would have to get a GS1 barcode because your product does not have one yet on there. And that's where you would need to go and pay the $30 for a code, get that code, get registered, etc. If you want to start making bundles with whatever in them and have a unique code that's unique to your company, then you need that GS1 barcode as well.
And right now, I'll just say because GS1 is a member-driven organization, and a lot of our standards come from our members in the community. So we just administer them and help with coordinating the advocacy on that. But right now, within our global standards process, they are actually working on some better guidance around bundles and how to identify bundles in a globally unique and standardized way. So we're hoping at the end of the year, we'll have some more guidance, and that large platforms like Amazon can then follow the same kind of guidance as well.
And that really does need to be addressed, I think, because it's definitely changed over the last 7 years that I've been selling. And it makes sense. You go back to this, and if you just want to sell this in a 2-pack, I really shouldn't have to register a brand and get a UPC because it's already got that from that brand. I just want to sell it as a 2-pack, and that's not quite the same as manufacturing your own product. But then you get into some of these crazy bundles where they've got some things manufactured from Alibaba and you've got some things from another brand, and you're putting it together, and there's no real rules necessarily about that, and you can do quite a few different ways of putting that together on the back end.
And it could get expensive for people like me that create lots of bundles if I have to pay for a barcode, I maybe wouldn't be creating as much bundles as I do. So I definitely like the G10 exemption, but there are items that I would prefer to have my barcode to that I do pay for. I just don't want to have to do it for every single bundle listing I'm making, for sure.
Well, I think it boils down to what you're calling it, because a lot of us call bundles, and a bundle essentially at the end of the day is just putting a couple things together. It's just putting 1 or 2 things together. So, when you get into each of those sub products that you're putting together, if you're putting, let's say, an HP computer part with a photo frame that's just generic and calling it a generic bundle, HP is going to get mad, and they have a lot of restrictions on what you can do, and you get into warranties and things like that. So it can get very, when somebody talks about how they're doing a bundle and another person talks about how they're doing a bundle, they could be talking about 2 different ways of doing things, and the regulations around that is very, very different.
Right. And there are some things to consider. You can't put 2 products together because the companies will get upset. Like, can't put a Coke product with a Pepsi product.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That would be awesome though. You could do like a Coke sampler or, you know, a soda sampler and put all the different sodas, put an RC, a Coke, a Pepsi, and just piss off everybody.
Yeah.
Lesley has a question here. I sell a clothing line that is a private store label that belongs to Kohl's, so no UPC, but on Amazon, the product is coded with a UPC that belongs to some unrelated apparel company. How did they do that? I think they just stole it. That'd be my guess.
I would say it sounds like it was not, it was stolen. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say, I don't know if you were on earlier, Lesley, when Lucy was referring to, like, if you ever go to Dollar Tree and scan a barcode of a Dollar Tree item, but here pops up, you know, maybe that shirt from Kohl's, you know, the UPC code will pop up to an unrelated item. That's what we're thinking is people will just grab obscure UPC codes from items from like dollar stores and then use that UPC code to list, say, the private label Kohl's items that don't have UPC codes. That's my guess too.
And I have heard it recommended out there, and I can't remember where or when. It's been a long time, but people were saying, you know, I go back to my Bath and Body Works. This is a travel size. So a lot of the travel size is not going to be on Amazon, just like single dollar store items. A lot of them aren't on Amazon using that UPC. And what they were telling sellers to do was go find unlinked UPCs and just use that for your product. And you're like, wait, no. Well, yes, you can do that. That's wrong.
Right. No,
you're not supposed
appropriate. Yeah.
But that's how they do it, Lesley. And it's not good. Just like, you know, people saying to return items on Amazon to get free stuff. That's also called stealing. That'd be like me saying, you don't need to pay for food. You just go into the grocery store, you get your cart full, and you just leave. And as long as you're faster than the employees chasing you, you're good. No. I don't know how these people get away with that. And how others are not like seeing it. I don't know. A lot of gullibility out there.
You'd probably get away with it for only so long. And then that's, again, the things that keeps making Amazon crack down on all of us more and more is because people doing these black hat things. Oh, yeah. You know, sneaky, shady sellers, you know, just keep making things harder and harder for the majority of us who are good. I think the majority of Amazon sellers are good. And maybe the people doing that with Kohl's aren't bad people. They're just desperate. Like, how can I get this on here? Like, you know, there's got to be a workaround.
For sure. All right. Well, any other tips or tricks that you have, Michelle? This has been awesome having you on.
No, I think we always say, you know, it's always good to use a unique identifier because you never know if your product's going to do so well on Amazon that you get discovered or you decide to expand on other channels. So that's the other thing to think about. If you do get a G10 exemption and you do well, and then you try to sell on a Walmart or a Target or somewhere else, you will need those identifiers. So just always think about where you also want to grow too. And, you know, keep that in mind as you're putting your product strategy together.
Very true. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on here. Thank you, John, in the background. John's been helping with links and stuff. So I want to make sure we thank him as well. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Again, if you have any questions after the show here, go ahead and leave them in the comments section, and we will get them answered the best we can.
Sounds good.
Let's see here. All right. And we are going to sign off. So thank you again, Michelle, and everybody.
Bye, guys.